So I'm here today with Ken Wilson, right, of Perkins&Will. And Ken and I were just talking, trying to figure out how long we've known each other. And it's over 20 years. Not that we're that old, but maybe we are getting a little old, Ken. I don't know. But
it's a state of mind, John.
It's a state of mind, you're right. So anyway, I asked you pretty early on, I said, hey, I'm doing this podcast. Can you like jump on and join Verta and me for an episode? And do you remember this conversation? And you're like, you know what, John, I'd love to, like, I'd have a blast. But I'm more of a generalist now. And there's other people at Perkins&Will that you could talk to who are in the weeds on this stuff, specifying product. And if you need me to, I'm there for you, but maybe not. And now here you are, man. See, sooner or later, you can't dodge the Reaper. So welcome to like break some dishes, man.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, glad to have you. So I want to really talk with you. We don't have a lot of time. This is going to be a short little segment, but I really want to talk with you. I want to kind of go back in time because you started Envision in 1999, and that was your firm was all about sustainable design.
Correct.
That was your mission. And what was what made you wake up one day and decide that you were going to start practicing sustainable design?
Well, to be honest, I've always in my life had a strong appreciation for the environment. I grew up in a small town in Arizona and got outside a lot. I spent my life as a kid outside. I was a Boy Scout, was an Eagle Scout, actually. And
somehow I think I knew that. I have a lot of respect for Eagle Scouts.
Love to be outside. It was a great training as a young kid about nature and how to live outside and all of that. And then I became an architect, and I have spent the majority of my professional career in Washington, D.C. And in Washington, D.C., there just happens to be a lot of associations and nonprofits and sort of mission-driven organizations. And they ended up being clients of mine. And a lot of times, they have to be very careful in what they spend their money on. And so we were doing things that ended up being sustainable strategies before I really thought of them as sustainable strategies. Like if we would go into a space and it's like, well, how can we build out a space for this nonprofit who's really focused on their mission, doing good work, and do it as cost effectively as possible, So it was reusing materials, reusing lights, using simple materials in creative ways. I'm condensing a very long story into a few words.
That's the whole point of it. I told you we only got 20 minutes.
But I ended up starting my own firm.
Okay.
Called Envision. And our first project was to do the headquarters for Greenpeace. And that was the first client I ever had.
It's kind of a badass association or badass organization.
It is. I mean,
right?
if you want to jump into sustainable design, having Greenpeace as a client was a good way to do that. Yeah. And it was great. And we had to interview for the project, but I think we had a tremendous amount of passion. And I think that came through in the interview. And I think it's fair to say the people that work at Greenpeace are passionate about what they do. Yeah. So we did that project, and it was great because we're just starting our firm, and we weren't bogged down with other issues and things like that, so we could totally focus on one project, which is a huge luxury to have.
Yep.
We started thinking about things really differently. We said, okay, so much about the way designers work is by rote, and the DNA between one project and another project is really similar. There are few changes. I mean, every project has a floor and walls.
You have a design process.
Windows, light fixtures, doorknobs, everything. And it's just a few minor changes. So the DNA is really similar. But we said, let's question every single thing that we do. and take the time to do it.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it was kind of this serendipitous moment where we could do that.
Yeah.
We can take that time, and we said, okay, let's start at the floor. Like, what is the most sustainable flooring that we can have? Is it carpet? Well, carpet's made out of nylon, and is that a good thing? Is it a petroleum product? Do we use wood? Oh, we're cutting down trees, and then you started to learn things that were not on anybody's radar at the time, but they were on Greenpeace. Like Greenpeace said, well, there's this wood, there's this thing called the Forest Stewardship Council.
So they told you
that
about
monitors, and that's where I first learned about FSC wood. And I can guarantee you, no one was talking about that at all in our industry, but Greenpeace was.
Yeah.
And they knew about it. And they said, as long as it's FSC wood or if it's reclaimed wood, it's okay.
So think about, we were talking about this too, right? This was back in 1999, which might as well have been 100 years ago, because it was before iPhones, it was before TikTok, it was before social media could influence anybody.
iPhone didn't happen for 8 years.
Yeah, or even inspire somebody. So I think, design today is all about inspiration, right? And whether you're using Pinterest or you're using Instagram, there's imagery, there are stories that inspire you. Where did you go for that? How did you find that?
You
just make it up as you went?
I've always, the way my personal philosophy about design and the way I approach design is one where it's a form follows function.
Yeah,
kind of
I've heard that
approach.
before. I think,
and
once or twice.
I think of myself as try to be anyway, a very rational designer. Like I want to have purposeful design.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so I don't like fluff in design. This is just me. I'm not saying fluff is bad.
Yeah,
it's just not what I do well. I think that whatever it is that we do has to have meaning and a reason why we did it.
Yeah.
And to be functional. And commercial interiors sort of strives for that in a way. Like, you have a program, you're trying to fit that program into a floor plan or evaluate several buildings and floor plans. It's like, how can you do that in a very efficient way? And which speaks to cost effectiveness, and in a way, it's efficiency as a sustainability strategy.
So you're building a house right now, right? And I've heard you talk about this house building project.
I know it's been tormenting me for quite a while.
Yeah, it is clearly tormenting you. But how did you research product? How did you find the right stuff? Like, how did you do it back then in 1999?
Well, it was hard, and we did it in a very traditional sense, like some places we just call them and say, tell me, are you doing anything in this area? I remember at the time we used Shaw Carpet, and it was a good solid carpet company. We knew people there, and we talked to them about what they're doing, and they were excited.
Did you think you drove behavior
that somebody
a little
cared
bit?
about this?
Yeah. But did you think that you kind of pushed the manufacturers a little bit? Like, hey, can you take this out of your product? Or?
I'm not sure that we pushed them with that first project that we did.
Yeah.
But once we did Greenpeace, then we did Environmental Defense Fund in Washington, which was one of the first lead pilot projects, lead for commercial interiors pilot projects. We did World Wildlife Fund and the UN Environment Program of Conservation International, and it started to steamroll, and we kind of for a while there.
Did you ever worry that you were
cornered the market of environmental organizations?
Yeah. Did you ever worry that maybe you were getting a little bit too, specialized? I guess?
No,
okay.
I never worried about that, and because this is just what I wanted to do, and these were obviously going to be the early adapters. Of sustainability.
Yeah.
And then we started to creep in and work for corporations like we did, I think it was Aveda. We did an Aveda Institute in Washington, D.C. For Aveda, and obviously a very environmentally conscious company.
Yeah.
And we did, I think, their first lead project. We did Apple's first lead project, although I'm not sure I'm allowed to talk about that. But it was their government
well,
affairs
let's talk
office.
about it. Tell me a little more about that Apple project. Yeah.
But at any rate, it started to branch out. And, the more we built a portfolio of what were not only green projects, but really beautiful design award-winning projects.
Yeah, which back then we didn't think you could have both.
Exactly.
Everybody was like, "Oh, you're gonna design sustainable space. It's gonna be like a thatched roof hut, and you're gonna have a lot of burlap." And
well, exactly. And it looked like it's going to look like a recycled newspaper or something like that.
Yeah,
And frankly, a lot of the sustainable design early on was more about sustainable than it was design.
Yeah.
And my partner and I had come from a very well-regarded design firm in Washington, and we thought, you know what? There's no reason why we can't do really beautiful design and make it sustainable. And I've always said, if you're a good chef, you can go into anybody's kitchen
Sure.
and their refrigerator and make a great meal.
Yeah.
But you have to be good.
Yeah.
And it's harder to be good when
Quick
you've got
Q&A.
those limitations.
Biggest technological innovation that's helped you practice better design since you started?
I would have to say the 3D visualization tools.
Oh, really?
In terms of design with a capital D design.
Yeah.
In that we can test things before, and we can 3D model and have virtual reality and actually be in spaces before they're designed. And you can look around and check things like just that have to do with a sensibility of balance and order and
Do you
things
still
like
draw?
that.
Do you still draw?
I draw all the time. I
Yeah.
have no idea how to use those
Old school.
technology tools
Old school.
at all.
You think there's a whole new generation of designers that really don't draw, right? They use all.
That is
Digital?
true. I think that it's a bit of a dying art. I mean, the better schools still require a little bit of it. And I'll tell you, there is absolutely no substitute for being in a meeting with a client and some new idea comes up that you haven't designed, or maybe they're not quite liking the idea that we've shown, and where you can roll out a roll of trace, pull out a pen, and sketch it for them, and have it be a credible sketch that looks like a designer or an architect drew it.
Yeah.
And that is a skill that I found to be extremely valuable in building confidence with clients.
Yeah. Biggest challenge right now, building your home in Park City, that you want to have it basically net zero, right?
Cost of materials.
Come on.
Costs a freaking fortune to build in Park City, and it's killing me.
Oh, okay. Well, that's Park City. That doesn't have anything to do with sustainability.
All right. With the sustainability part of it. Yeah.
See, we've spent all this time telling people there's no premium to it.
You kind of want it all, and we are looking at everything, and just trying to, avoid high embodied carbon materials like steel and concrete, which unfortunately have to go into the structure. I mean, one of the things that I'm having to design for there that I wasn't particularly used to was the idea of the heavy snow loads, where at 7,000 feet we get, 300 to 400 inches of snow every year.
Yeah.
And we're also in a seismic zone. So I have shear walls in my house, believe it or not.
Okay.
And it's just more material.
Yeah.
And really there's a lot of carbon wrapped up in your structure. So I'm a little disappointed about that, but I did go piece by piece with my structural engineer, going, every piece of steel he had in there, could that be wood? And how big of a piece of wood would that be?
So you're kind of going back to the old days when you questioned everything.
I
try
to vet everything that goes in. And I know a lot more about product. I do miss the fact that this is a personal endeavor and not a Perkins&Will endeavor where I have resources. I'm going to have people
limited resources.
research this for me.
Yeah.
I really can't do that with my own house project. So I'm doing it on my own, but I'm
You have to learn how
also-
to sell yourself on the value proposition a little bit.
No,
Talk
I'm
yourself
actually
into it.
really enjoying getting back into it
Yeah.
because I have been in this high altitude orbit
Yeah.
the last 5 years or so, and it's nice to come back and get my hands dirty.
So somebody who's really been, I mean, you've been pushing environmental design longer than anybody I know. What are you looking forward to? What's your look into the future? Where do you how do you think we're going? Where do you think we're going here? Are you optimistic? Are you bullish? Are you?
I'm trying to be optimistic, John, but it's hard.
Yeah.
I would say that from a design perspective, we need to make some major shifts in a hurry. And I think that we could get more help from the press on this because I think designers go to the design press for inspiration.
Yeah.
And I think there's maybe a little too much emphasis on fashion or new or different
Yeah.
than good or right. And so I think that there needs to be a little bit more of that because we got to have a mind shift. There's no reason why we can't be new and different and still be focused on things like embodied carbon, which is, is just a huge issue, and we're part of it. And as designers, we have this tremendous buying power. We're like shoppers,
Yeah.
that are responsible for spending millions and millions of dollars every year.
Yep.
And we need to be spending that money on the right things, and really looking at design differently and what's important in design and that's one of the things that our ASAD Committee on Climate, Health, and Equity is trying to reshape the definition of what good design is, and
Right.
what does it need to include. It needs to be, it needs to be functional. It needs to be cost effective. It needs
Yep.
to be all these things, but it also needs to tread as lightly on the environment as possible.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
be as healthy as possible as well.
Yeah, so you got to be optimistic. Otherwise, you become
So
a Debbie Downer, man. Nobody wants to hang around with Debbie Downers. Right?
no, it's true. And and we have a big role to play
Yeah.
in this that I don't think has been fully realized.
What last question, because we got to wrap it up. But let's talk to young designers for a minute, right? And looking back at the 100 years that you've been practicing design since the 1800s when you were making log cabins, what give us so talk to the young designers out there that might be listening to this today. What can they do? Right? Well, how can they make the kind of impact that you've been able to make in the industry?
Well, I think if you care about the planet and you care about the future,
Which they all are going to tell you they do.
yeah, let's hope
All right.
so.
Yep, let's hope.
And because I think unfortunately it's theirs to fix. We've created a hell of a mess for them. In this profession in general, when you come out of it, going into it, half of what you're going to learn is going to be taught to you by your firm. You're going to learn how to put together a project, and you're going to learn building codes. You're going to hopefully you are in with a good group of designers that's really going to help you develop your design talent and abilities. And the other half is on you. It's up to you to say, I'm going to do this. Whether this firm I'm in at this moment, right out of school, is the right firm for me or not. There's a hell of a lot to be learned from, working anywhere.
Yeah.
But the rest is going to be up to me. I make a personal commitment to learning about sustainability and how I can do better. So when I see opportunities to apply that in my job, I can do it. But I'm not going to wait for my firm to tell me how to do that.
Okay.
I'm going to do that on my own. I'm going to learn about it. And, and if you get licensed you're going to end up having to do a certain amount of continuing education, whether you're an architect or an interior designer, in order to maintain your license. And so choose those things where you learn about sustainability or health and wellness or equity and things like that. Choose those things.
Yeah.
And because that other 50% is really going to have a lot to determine where you're going to end up in your career.
Okay. Cool.
And do you want to be a leader or do you want to be a follower?
There you go. Hey, thanks, man. I appreciate you giving me 20 minutes. One of my best friends. It took me over a year to get him on the podcast, but we got
love you,
you
brother.
Here. Love you back, man.